HarperCollins presents To Catch a King, Charles II's Great Escape, by Charles Spencer, read by Richard Trinder. I know how men in exile feed on dreams. Aeschylus. Introduction. King Charles II had a favourite story. It was about the 6 weeks when, aged 21, he had been on the run for his life. Those hunting him down had included the regicides, those responsible for his father's trial and beheading, who feared him as a deadly avenger. The parliamentary army, who viewed him as the commander of a defeated foreign invasion, and ordinary people, because upon his head sat not the English crown of his birthright, but a colossal financial reward. This brief period of Charles II's life stood alone for many reasons. While there were many other times when the bleak reality of his situation fell well short of any reasonable princely expectations, it marked the low point of his fortunes, both as man and royal dignitary. It was uniquely exhilarating for him, in a way that only a genuine life-or-death tussle could be, and it showed off personal qualities that were not always evident in an individual whose self-indulgence and sense of entitlement could infuriate even his most loyal devotees. In his hour of greatest danger, he was proud to note, had arisen within him a quickness of wit, an adaptability, and a hard instinct for survival that had saved his neck. In the spring of 1660, Charles returned to England to claim his throne, on a ship whose figurehead of Oliver Cromwell had hastily been removed, and whose name had been changed from the Naseby, the battle that had been his father's most punishing defeat, to the Royal Charles. Samuel Pepys was a fellow passenger, and wrote in his diary for the 23rd of May 1660 of how, upon the quarter-deck, he, Charles, fell into discourse of his escape from Worcester, where it made me ready to weep to hear the stories that he told of his difficulties that he had passed through, of his travelling 4 days and 3 nights on foot, every step up to his knees in dirt, with nothing but a green coat and a pair of country breeches on, and a pair of country shoes that made him so sore all over his feet that he could barely stir. In the subjects of the kingdom that he had been allowed suddenly and unexpectedly to gain, Charles had found a fresh audience for his pet tale. They would hear repeatedly of their new young king's exploits. Not that Pepys complained, for the retelling of events that had taken place when he had been a young man of 18, 6 months into his first year at Cambridge University, particularly intrigued him. They awoke in this most famous of English diarists the tracking instincts of an investigative journalist. He decided to check how much of the king's recollection of the 6 weeks' adventure were true, and to what extent they had been seasoned by royal fancy or compromised by forgetfulness. 2 decades later, during one of the royal court's stays in Suffolk for the horse racing on Newmarket Heath, Pepys managed to obtain an audience with the king. In his scratchy shorthand, his eyesight had been failing for more than a decade, he took down what Charles remembered of the most electrifying time of his life. Riveted by what he had heard, Pepys quickly secured a second session, his manuscript revealing additions where he included fresh details that Charles had forgotten the first time around. Meanwhile, Pepys resolved to trace those still alive from the motley bunch that had helped the king on his journey from shattering defeat to miraculous delivery. An exceptionally busy man, being at different times a member of Parliament for 2 constituencies and Chief Secretary to the Admiralty, Pepys had hoped to piece together the whole correct version of the astonishing tale of escape and present it as the definitive account. It appears that he had completed almost his entire collection of relevant documents by December 1684, 2 months before Charles's sudden death at the age of 54, for that was when he had it bound. A few additions were kept with this volume, including Colonel George Gunter's report, which arrived at some point during the first 7 months of 1685. There is a paragraph near the start
Sample complete. Ready to continue?